Hello, everyone, and welcome back for a brand new episode of Collider Connected. There's so many reasons I'm so excited about this one because Mary Steenburgen is here with us, and she is incredible, but the whole Collider audience at this point knows how obsessed I am with Zoey's extraordinary playlist. It is something else and really just exceeded my expectations in every way imaginable. So huge congratulations to you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we always do with Collider Connected, we like to start at the very beginning here. So do you remember the film, the show, the performance that made you say, there's no other choice, I have to be an actor?
Yes, 100%. Because I grew up in Arkansas. My dad was a freight train conductor. Our family had no money. But when I was about 9 years old, my mother somehow managed to get us tickets to go see a little touring company of the Music Man that came through Little Rock, Arkansas. And I just remember that I could barely breathe. And that it was like I had gone to a different world, a different place that I'd never been before. And I was a huge reader. There were some things in my childhood that were very difficult, and my way of dealing with them was to escape through books. And so I already had this kind of love of imaginary worlds, and then here was an imaginary world that was populated with people moving around and singing and dancing, and from that second on, I think I was an actor, even though it took me a few more years to understand that.
So you discover that you really want to be an actor, but what was that point where it clicked that you first felt, that you had that natural ability to really do that?
I remember that too. I was in a conversation with two friends of mine, and we were 16, and one of them had an amazing singing voice, and the other one was really good at playing bass guitar, a woman who's really good at bass guitar and played in a band, and they both had these gifts. And I remember thinking or saying out loud, I think, I wish I had something like that. And then I remember going, but you do, you're an actor, which was kind of ridiculous because I'd never been in anything. I'd never, demonstrated any ability to be an actor. But I think because of the books and because of the way I read and because of the way that those worlds were of great comfort and solace and importance to me. And they were the only way, we didn't have money to go on trips or anything like that. I had never been anywhere outside of going from Little Rock, Arkansas to Newport, Arkansas on one of my dad's trains that he worked on, and which was very cool. But, it wasn't like I'd seen the world. And so I remember thinking, that was my travel. I would travel to England. I would travel to France. I'd seen Paris, but always through books, And I just remember thinking, oh, yeah, no, I'm an actor. And in that conversation, I told them that. They're kind of like, yeah, right. But, haha.
It sounded like even before your career took off, you had a real sense of confidence in your ability, which I think is something very special. So in those earlier days when you're trying to, make it, was there ever any doubt in your mind? Were there any major hurdles that you had to overcome? And how do you do that and keep your sights going forward?
Well, the path led me from that moment on. I did start auditioning for school plays, and I played Emily in Our Town, the ubiquitous part for a young woman to play in high school. And then I went to 1 year of college to Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, and I was going to play there called The Night Thoreau Spent in Jail. And the man who was the professor there gave me this list of schools in New York. And he said, you know, you really should go to New York because you could do this. And here's a list of schools, and this is the hardest one to get into, but there's a very great man there that you could study with. And there was a little check mark. I still have this list, by the way, check mark by the Neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater. And that was Sandy Meisner was the teacher, and it was the only school I applied to. And some of them I couldn't have afforded anyway, but that one I worked really hard. I got in, miraculously got in, and then went to New York where I knew no one, and went, you know, at 18 years old to go study at the Neighborhood Playhouse. And my first job was at Doubleday Bookstore, but of course I spent all my earnings on on books. So I had to stop doing that, and I became a waitress. So I would go to school from 9 to 5, and then I had about an hour to have dinner, and then I'd go do a waitressing shift to 6:37, something like that, till like 3 in the morning, and then get up and do it all over again. Very little sleep. But I, in answer to your question, did I doubt? I was a waitress for 6.5 years in New York, lots of different restaurants. And I don't think I doubted that I was doing the right thing. I didn't necessarily think I was going to become, you know, a successful professional actor. I was going to be a professional actor. Whether or not it was successful was kind of beyond my my ability to imagine. I sometimes did have these like fantasies before I would go to sleep about, and they weren't really about movies. It was about being in the theater in New York, because that's what I knew. I'd never been on a movie set in my life. And then, you know, when I was 24, I got this, and I had been in a comedy improv group for about 2.5 years. And we bizarrely, we knew someone at the Bureau of Alcoholism of the city of New York. So we did comedy shows for people who are drying out from booze, you know? And I'm not sure why, but that's what our little group did. And if you can make them laugh, you can kind of make anybody laugh, because they're hurting, you know, and they mostly would want us to reenact themselves. You know, they would always say, 2 drunks at a bus stop, 2 drunks on a street corner, you know. So I got very good at being drunk when I wasn't. But yeah, so then I met a casting director and almost left the interview, but turned around and said, "Are you casting anything in particular?" And she told me about this movie she was casting called Going South. And I said, you know, "Wow, that sounds so cool." And she said, "Well, sadly, I can't get you a meeting on this, because I'm just seeing really well-known actors at this point, or really beautiful models." And I didn't fall into either of those categories. And so I got up to leave, and something happened inside me that I think is now just, you know, I believe it's like listening to your angels, or listening to your, whatever you want to name you want to give it. I like angels, but I turned around and said, are you casting anything in particular? And she said, yeah, she told me about that. And I said, listen, I really like to read for that. And I'm going to go out there and wait till you give me a script. And she looked at me like, wait, what didn't you understand about what I just told you? You're not going to read for this. And then I went out the door, and then I went, oh my God, this is like the most important person I know in the business in New York. And I just insulted her. So I sat down, and I'm like trying to compose my apology. And I see these 2 feet, and I hear this voice saying, are you waiting to see me? And I'm like, that's Jack Nicholson's voice. And my first instinct is, don't let him see you, because you look like crap today. You came straight from a waitressing shift. Maybe you can get back in here tomorrow. I mean, it was such a convoluted way of thinking. But anyway, I kept my head down. I said, no. And he goes, you're not waiting to see me? And I said, no. And he goes, why not? And I finally looked up, and I said, because I don't have a script. And he goes over, gets a script, and hands it to me. And I'm like, I mean, she never said anything about him being in the city of New York, much less in somewhere in that office. So it was like miraculous. It was all miraculous. And so then I managed to come back the next day for the audition, and I started reading, and he kept me reading every single scene in the movie repeatedly. And at the end of it, he said, where have you been? And I said, I've been here for like 6.5 years. And he said, well, I want to direct this, so you know what that means, right? And I said, yeah. And I had zero clue what that meant. But what it meant was, I can't use you. I have to have a star, you know? And so, anyway, we said goodbye to each other, and I really believed I would probably never see him again. And I was back at my waitressing shift at the Magic Pan, which was this like crepe restaurant where I had to dress up like a little French girl. Really pathetic. But anyway, and I heard that I'm being flown to Hollywood, you know, for a screen test. It was crazy. It was crazy. And then I tested along with a bunch of amazing actors, some of who are now friends of mine. And by some crazy miracle, I got that part. And that just changed my life forever. So my whole career is because of Jack Nicholson. It really isn't. He was an amazing mentor to me. He showed films to me that he thought I should be aware of and that I should learn from, and performances that might give me something or teach me. And it was just, he was a generous, extraordinary mentor and friend.
That experience makes my heart feel like it's going to explode. And it really is like a 1 in a million kind of thing. I'm curious, did that happening to you influence how you've carried yourself over the years, especially when you run into some younger talent out there that might need a boost also?
Yeah, I really try to encourage people to go after their dreams, and also so many young people are so focused on this linear path that involves an agent and and booking this and booking that and an agent and all this stuff. And I mean, mine came because I did comedy improv for people drying out from booze. It's like, it could not be more improbable, circuitous, unpredictable. So I just try to encourage them to listen to the universe and to their hearts, and to try to do everything they can to be ready for their moment, because that's part of it too, is that I'd worked my butt off so that by the time I did have that moment, it wasn't just about luck. It was about, no, I had to rise to the occasion and read that in such a way that he couldn't imagine anyone but me playing that part. And it's funny, I never saw that screen test all these years. And then a friend of mine works at Paramount, and I was saying, it's probably gone, it's probably destroyed. And, and she said, well, my friend works, in the archives. And I said, there's no way that's still around. And I got this like Blu-ray disc of my screen test with Jack. And it's really, at this point, I'm so much older that it's like looking at one of my children or something. It's like, it's so far, but I can remember, I'm kind of amazed at how calm I looked, even though, because I know what I was going through inside, yeah, crazy.
Imagine. Moving a little forward now in the filmography here, I have to ask you about Melvin and Howard, for obvious reasons. But the other big thing about that one is it upsets me how inaccessible that movie is. Like it's very difficult to find a copy of it.
I know. I'll tell you why. And I love Universal. I write music for Universal, but Universal at the time when that movie was made by the great director, Jonathan Demme, and written by the great screenwriter, Bo Coleman, it came out and it was like the only reason anyone ever saw that movie was because of the critics. When people like badmouth critics, I always think I wouldn't have a career without them, because that movie no one was going to see because Universal buried it. They couldn't figure out how to sell a movie about a guy. The story is about the kind of milkman who was a part of the Mormon church, and he claimed to be the heir to the Howard Hughes fortune. And the reason he claimed that is that he claimed that he picked up, this is his truth, a true story. He picked up Howard Hughes in the middle of the desert after a little motorcycle crash that Howard Hughes had. And he took him to the back of his hotel that he owned, and he gave him all the change in his pocket, not knowing it was Howard Hughes, just knowing it was some poor old guy that needed help. And that while they were in the car, they sang, Melvin had written this song, and he got Howard Hughes to sing his song. And that was made him so happy. And then when Howard Hughes died, there was a will that listed all these people. This is before the age of computers or personal computers, where Melvin could have looked up these people or researched it or figured this out. It was written in a type of ballpoint pen that Howard Hughes liked to write with, but that had been he'd bought up and it had been discontinued. And it said 1/17 of my fortune to Melvin Dumar of Gabbs, Nevada, along with a whole lot of other names. And the other names were like, I think for the most part, either business friends or very obscure relatives and things like that. And I saw the will, and it was hard to believe that wasn't true. It's just hard to believe, having met Melvin, that he would have had, that anyone would have had the ability to have done that at that time and pull that off. And so anyway, we told his story, and the people surrounding Howard Hughes weren't all choked up about it because they didn't want to believe in the legitimacy of that will. And then Universal got it, and I don't know if they were pressured about it. I've never known that, but they certainly didn't know how to sell the movie about this, what they deemed a kind of loser. And so they just dumped it, and they didn't release it in Europe. It got no release in Europe. For years, I would have people say, can you please tell us how we can see it? And I was like, I have no idea.
I feel bad about the way that I've seen it, because it's not an appropriate way, but you can find not super clear versions on YouTube, but that's the kind of movie where I would buy like an elaborate Blu-ray with tons of behind the scenes story. And I want all the details, and we can't get them.
Well, somebody needs to do it. You're absolutely right. And I wish we would have done it while Jonathan was alive, but just out of respect for him, because Jonathan Demme was one of the great American filmmakers. And I cherished every single second of working with him. I worked with him twice, also in the movie Philadelphia. But it's a really strange thing. It's like the world conspired against this beautiful little movie, and it's an absolutely beautiful little work of art.
Are there any specific memories from making that movie that you find yourself recalling often?
We were doing this scene where I'm getting remarried to Melvin, and we don't have enough money to pay for the little place in Vegas or Reno or wherever it was. But, and I'm very pregnant. And so we volunteer to be witnesses to other people's weddings, and we kiss them and stuff, and be the witnesses until we've done enough that we make enough money that we can actually get married to each other. And that was a strange day because I've never kissed so many people in one day. There was like all these guys, and that was strange. But the thing I remember most about that day is that when I was sitting in makeup, it was toward the end of the shoot, and we're not really welcomed there because of this whole controversy about Howard Hughes and everything. So we weren't staying in the nicest hotels, and it had been a long, hard shoot. And I was in makeup, and Jonathan came in through the door in the makeup trailer, and he had on this like pinstripe suit with a big carnation in the lapel. And I said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "Nowhere." And I said, "What are you so dressed up for?" And he goes, "You're getting married today." and that was his direction to me that day. He didn't give me another direction that day. He just dressed up for my wedding. And that was the magic of Jonathan Demme, that it was like, from the second I saw him and he told me that, it was like I had all the energy in the world. There were no problems. It was like, what a blessing to be able to do this scene today. That's what he brought out in you.
I love that. I love hearing about vibes like that on a set, which is very important. Moving forward to Back to the Future, the unusual situation on that one is you were in part 3, but part 2 hadn't even come out yet. So while you were making part 3, what were your expectations? Did you realize that was going to wind up being one of the most iconic trilogies of all time?
I think I did, because Bob Zemeckis was so extraordinary, and it was so beautifully written, and he's such an amazing director. And I didn't know if he'd survive it, because he's directing us all day, and because Westerns I love Westerns. I love making Westerns, but they're hard and they're hot and they're dusty, and you sleep like a baby at the end of the day because it's grueling. And he would do this all day and then get in a helicopter and fly to Universal and edit number 2 all night. So I don't know how he got through. I'm not sure what he was on to get through that, but he managed always to be in an amazing mood, and to, so I think it felt like there was something special happening. And the first person that ever kind of spoke to me in movies on screen was Christopher Lloyd in Going South. To be doing this iconic role with someone that was such a dear friend, that was really nice.
I hate to move on from that one so quickly, but I want to get to Zoey. And there's one thing I want to ask you about to tee up that part of the conversation, because your story about discovering your songwriting ability really does it completely blows my mind, especially because now that I've seen Zoey, I can see some parallels there in a sense.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I kind of love that. So before your surgery, did you have any understanding whatsoever about like what was buried inside you as far as the talent in the music realm? Not
at all. No clue. I mean, I didn't, to be honest, I was moved, my first thing I fell in love with was that musical, my first concert was the Beatles in Houston, Texas, so I had some real musical connections but I didn't suspect that I had anything in there to offer. I did sing in the movie The Butcher's Wife, and I worked really hard to be able to do that. And then I sang once again but by then the musical weirdness had happened to me. And I did a movie with John Turteltaub that he directed called Las Vegas with Michael Douglas and Bobby De Niro and, these Kevin Kline. It was Morgan Freeman. We could go on and on. All these great men were in this movie. And me as a kind of wannabe singer. But I had never, until Zoey's Playlist, I had never really sung and danced at the same time. And here I am in my 60s and I'm doing these things that are absolutely terrifying that all these kids have been doing already all their lives. And I'm doing it at this age for the first time. And I think one of the things that my discovering, very briefly for the people who are watching who don't know this crazy story, in 2007, April 17th, 2007, I had a surgery on my arm that was rather innocuous, but I had to go under a general anesthetic. And when I came out from under it, I knew something was really different in my brain. And we kept trying to drink enough water or talk to someone that could tell me what was happening to make it all go away, but it didn't go away. And basically what happened was I went from having a normal relationship to music to having a really obsessive relationship with music, which I still have. And I hear music pretty much all day long and on a bad night all night long. But I went from being like a peaceful Zen little commercial on television to being an overscored movie that just went where music goes all the time. And that's what happened. And I'm not sure why. I've heard various theories on what happened to me. There's certainly books of other people that have had similar things. But when it didn't go away, after a couple of months, I finally realized that I had to master it because it was kind of mastering me. At the time, I couldn't have learned lines. I couldn't have done Zoey's Playlist. I couldn't have acted. I was kind of, I couldn't focus anywhere else. And so I started studying songwriting, and little by little, I learned to take what I heard in my mind and put it into a song. And then as time has gone on, it's become something that I learned my craft in Nashville, Tennessee with some of the great They don't just write country, but they do write country brilliantly. They're storytellers, and they write all kinds of music. And I've been honored to earn the right to work amongst them. And we write together now on Zoom. And we just turned in the last song in what's hopefully going to be an animated film of the book, The Underneath. So my favorite thing is combining acting and songwriting, and writing, especially for animation, because it's so fun. So that's my story. And Zoey's playlist, I suspect that they were somewhat inspired by my story when they wrote it, and that's probably part of the reason why they wanted me there. I didn't ever put them on the spot and ask them, but I asked them the first question I asked them when I went in is, do you know my story? And they said, yes. And so I said, well, then have you heard me sing? Because I'm not like those guys. And they're like, yes, and you can do this. And I really worked at it, and I enjoy it very, very much. And it's a very special group of people. And Jane Levy is astounding as Zoey, just amazing. And Austin Winsberg, who created it, wrote a show about, really inspired by the fact that his dad had this disease called PSP, where it took him down so fast from being this runner, that very athletic man, to losing his voice and then eventually losing his life. And Austin took the grief of that and made it this very lyrical, beautiful story that is told in many ways through music. And it's just been one of the scariest things and one of the most gratifying, thrilling things I've ever done.
You guys all should be very proud. Again, I'm just blown away by the whole thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about your collaboration with Mandy too, because you just brought up you've never sung and danced before. And on another Collider Connected, Jane was telling me about their collaboration and how she was able to express when she felt that, a certain song wasn't right for crazy choreography like that. So what would you say is the song that you two had to workshop most?
Well, the song that all of us were confused by and couldn't figure out, but it ended up being fun, was We Gotta Get Out of This Place. Because that's set in it's as we're picking out caskets for my husband. And I think all of us were scared of it because caskets are scary and it's a depressing subject. And the song is not sad and slow. It's this kind of upbeat song. And so it became this thing of creating this need to escape from this place. And that's Mandy Moore is just, Mandy Moore, the choreographer, is amazing because she works completely in the same way that a good actor works. She starts with the meat of the scene and the heart of the scene and what your character is experiencing. She doesn't start with, oh, I like this kind of movement or that kind of movement. She starts with the gut, and with the heart. And then from there, when you articulate and you talk to her, you just start moving together, and it's done in such an amazing, organic way that I became much less frightened of it. And because I realized I don't have to suddenly, at age 67, turn into, somebody who's danced and done this my whole life. That's impossible. But what I can do is tell you what's going on in my heart through the rest of my body to that song. And that's what she does. And it's just, it's so organic and so truthful. And then there's the exuberant ones that are, a little bit more dancerly, I suppose. And then I'm always happy to be in the back of the pack. But it was so much fun. And so, it's my version of driving a fast race car. It's unbelievably thrilling and scary and so gratifying.
Oh man, I have like a million more questions for you about Zoey and all your other things, but I know we have to wind down here. So I don't know how much you know about season 2, which when I heard that news, I was just freaking out. I was so thrilled for you guys. But if you could pick one member of the Zoey ensemble for Maggie to get to spend more time with in season 2 on screen, who would it be and why?
Well, Peter Gallagher, because Peter made that season work for everybody, because he, without ever saying a word, except in song, because he's just he's so special and such a lovely human being. And so, I really hope he haunts Maggie because I adore him. But I'm so excited to do. I love my scenes with Jane because she leaves herself alone and she works moment to moment, and she really puts her heart out there on the line, and so my scenes with her were always very alive. There's nothing, there's not a single moment that she's not present, and it's really cool to work with her. But it is true of all of them. I mean, just to be around in the same room with Alex Newell, and that voice is like, I just try to make up reasons for Alex to sing. It's so crazy.
Just to get a taste of it as a viewer, I'm so grateful that this show is here. And thank you so much for your time today. Seriously, your stories are so inspiring. And for everybody out there who is scratching their head, I cannot believe I've done this whole interview and I've not brought up Wild Rose.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, watch Wild Rose. I wrote with Kate York and Caitlin Smith. We wrote the song that Jessie Buckley sings at the end, and we were really honored to win the Critics' Choice Award for that song. Well, we tied with Elton John and Bernie Taupin, so that was kind of very cool for me. But yeah, Wild Rose, Jessie Buckley is magnificent in that movie, so check it out.
Oh yeah, I am going to emphasize that. Not like I haven't done it on this channel a million times before, but watch Wild Rose and watch Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist. You can stream it on Hulu. It's available on the NBC app. Please, take my word for it. It's going to brighten your day and move you, and just the emotions through the roof. Mary, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, and love to your family that are sequestered there together. Hopefully you'll be out in the world before too long.